Elvis was singing "Can't Help Falling in Love" when someone in the crowd caused him to stop in the middle of the song and start crying in front of 15,000 people. The last few years of his life would never be the same after what he saw in the fifth row. The LA Hilton was the place on August 12, 1973. They were glued to the screen and couldn't miss a word. After getting them excited with Burning Love and Hound Dog, he was now moving on to a slower part of his set. Elvis was about halfway through the song when he looked over to the fifth row. A very old woman with silver hair and a simple blue dress was sitting there. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and looked to be in her 70s. The woman in front of Elvis would not have stood out among all the other acts, but something about her caught his attention. The recognition knocked him out like a punch. Her eyes, her soft smile, and the way she sat with perfect form all caught my attention. Elvis tried to sing on, but the words wouldn't come out of his cracked voice. It got rough for him to hold the microphone. Then, to everyone's surprise, the king of rock and roll started crying. The band slowly stopped playing because they didn't understand why Elvis had such a quick emotional breakdown. 15,000 people were stunned and silent as they watched their idol fight to stay calm on stage. Elvis walked to the edge of the stage and wiped his eyes, as if the bright lights could tell him something he already knew in his heart. "Mrs. Olsson," Elvis called out. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it could be heard clearly through the sound system in the arena. "Margaret Olsson, is that really you?" The old woman smiled with the same warm look that had calmed down a scared boy 30 years before. She slightly raised her hand and said yes. "Hello, Elvis," she answered, her voice strong for her age. "It's been a long time." The next thing that happened had never happened in the history of Las Vegas entertainment. That's when Elvis put down his mic, walked off the stage, and went into the wings, leaving 15,000 people completely confused. Everyone on his team was surprised by how he was moving backstage. He told his road boss, Joe Esposito, "Joe," with tears still running down his face, "I need you to get that woman from the fifth row, the lady in the blue dress. Bring her backstage now." "Elvis, we're in the middle of a show," Joe said. "We can't just. That woman changed my life," Elvis said, his voice heavy with emotion. To understand why Elvis Presley would stop his show for an old school teacher in Las Vegas, we have to go back 30 years to a small town in Mississippi called Tupelo and an 8-year-old boy who was scared and thought he was worthless. In 1943, Elvis Presley wasn't a king. He was a painfully shy child living with his parents, Vernon and Gladys, in a 2-room house. The family was desperately poor and moved from rental to rental. His father worked irregularly and his mother did laundry. School was a nightmare, and everyone could see how poor his family was. Peers called him Mama's boy and teased him all the time. But the worst part wasn't the teasing, it was how most of his teachers treated him. They saw a poor kid and wrote him off. They talked to him like he was stupid, didn't expect anything from him, and made it clear they thought he would never amount to anything. By age 8, Elvis had internalized this message and thought he was worthless. Then Elvis got a 3rd-grade teacher named Margaret Olsson. Mrs. Olsson was different. She was from Minnesota but had come down to teach because she thought every child should have a chance. She was in her early 40s, single, and dedicated to education. Mrs. Olsson noticed Elvis from the first day, not because he was a bother, but because he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. She saw something in Elvis that no one else had seen. Other teachers talked down to Elvis, but Mrs. Olsson treated him with the same respect she showed to every other student. When the other kids laughed at his stutter, she would quietly correct them and tell him to keep talking. When he couldn't afford school supplies, she would find extra pencils and paper that he needed. But most importantly, Mrs. Olsson saw that Elvis had a voice. She noticed something deeper than just his soft, musical voice as a child. She saw how he hummed to himself while working and how he seemed to find rhythm in everything around him. In music class, while most of the other kids sang in a flat, off-key voice, Elvis sang with a natural skill that was amazing for someone so young. One November afternoon, Mrs. Olsson asked Elvis to stay after his class. The other kids left, many of them giving him sympathetic looks because they thought he was in trouble. Elvis sat at his desk, expecting the worst. Instead, Mrs. Olsson sat down next to him and said, "Elvis," in a soft voice, "I want you to sing something for me." Elvis looked at her like she didn't understand. "Ma'am, I've heard you humming and noticed your voice during music class. You have something special." Elvis was scared because no one had ever asked him to perform or told him he was good at anything. But Mrs. Olson's gentle support made him feel safe, so he sang Old Shep, a song his mother had taught him about a boy and his dog. Mrs. Olson had tears in her eyes when he was done. "Elvis," she said quietly, "you're going to be something special someday. Your voice is a gift from God." Those words were like sunshine breaking through clouds for Elvis Presley, who was 8 years old at the time. No adult had ever told him he was good at anything, that he had a gift, or that he would be something special. After that day, Mrs. Olson became Elvis's champion. She pushed him to sing in the school's Christmas program and told the other kids how great their voice was, which changed how they saw him. She told him he should be in the school talent show, and most importantly, she made him feel like he was important. Mrs. Olson also did something else very important for Elvis's growth. She started teaching him about different kinds of music. She brought records from home, like classical folk and blues recordings, and told him that music could bring people together from all walks of life. One day, she brought in a record by blues singer Arthur Crudup. Elvis had never heard anything like it, raw feeling, the way Crudup poured his heart into the music. Mrs. Olson saw how interested Elvis was and told him, "Music doesn't see color, Elvis. It doesn't see poor or rich. It only sees what is real and what felt. Both of those sound like you." There was more to Mrs. Olson's faith in Elvis than just music. It gave him hope for the first time in his life that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't useless. That maybe his family's poverty didn't limit his potential. That maybe he could be more than what everyone thought he could be. Mrs. Olson stayed after school to help Elvis with his reading. When other kids didn't let him play games at recess, she made sure he had something useful to do. When he came to school obviously hungry, she would forget her lunch and share it with him, making it look like an accident so he wouldn't think it was charity. But maybe most importantly, Mrs. Olson taught Elvis about kindness and respect. She showed him how to treat others with respect no matter what. By the end of third grade, Elvis Presley had changed. The shy, stuttering boy who thought he wasn't worth anything had become a child full of confidence and hope. He still lived in poverty and had a hard time at home, but now he knew that someone believed in him. When the school year ended, Mrs. Olson took Elvis aside one last time. She had accepted a job as a teacher in another state and wouldn't be going back to law in elementary school. "Elvis," she told him, "I want you to remember something. There is a special gift for you that you have that changes nothing about your life. People will try to tell you that you're not important, but you are. People should not tell you that you can't reach your goals, you can. I know you'll remember that." Elvis, who was 9 years old at the time, told her he would never forget. A small notebook was taken out of Mrs. Olson's desk. She told him, "I want you to have this. I want you to write down how you feel whenever you feel down. Also, write down your ideas whenever you feel hopeful. When you see this again, you'll know how far you've come." Elvis grabbed the notebook like it was a valuable prize and took it. He would carry that notebook with him for years, through hard times, the early stages of his music career, and his first records at Sun Studio. Mrs. Olson turned back to Elvis as she left the classroom for the last time. "You should take care of your voice, Elvis. Everyone needs to hear it." For 30 years, that was the last thing Elvis heard from Margaret Olsson. In the years that followed, Elvis went from being a shy kid to a famous person all over the world. He kept Mrs. Olson's words in mind through Sun records, Army service movies, and his return to live shows. The notebook she gave him was still very important to him. He would write in it when things were tough, remembering how much she believed in him when he was struggling with fame, drugs, and doubt. But as the years went by, I forgot exactly who Mrs. Olson was. A little boy who was scared was buried under fans and glittery jumpsuits. In 1973, Elvis's work had both its high points and low points. His Las Vegas stays were huge hits, but his fame made him feel more and more alone. He had health problems, social problems, and became more and more dependent on prescription drugs. The man who used to be that eager boy now wondered sometimes if his life had any purpose other than being fun. Then Margaret Olsson walked into his show in Las Vegas. It was now 73 years old for Margaret. She taught for 40 years and changed the lives of many students, but she would always remember the shy boy with the amazing voice. She had watched Elvis's rise to fame from afar, feeling both proud and worried as he became a worldwide star. She quit her job in 1968 and went to Las Vegas to be close to her sister. She had never been to one of Elvis's shows because she thought her memories were more important. But her sister talked her into coming this evening. Margaret, her sister, told her, "He's not just a performer. You still believe in that boy. Someone might need to let him know that they remember." Elvis wasn't going to know who Mrs. Olsson was anytime soon. She only wanted to see how the shy kid with the pretty voice had grown up. The ticket she bought was in the middle area, but it was far enough back that she wouldn't draw attention to herself. This way, she could see the man that little Elvis had grown into. She felt terrible about what she saw. Of course, Elvis was great on stage. He had an even stronger voice than she thought he would have. He was powerful and exciting, but she could see something else. She felt lonely and sad, which made her think of the 8-year-old boy who had felt like he wasn't worth anything. 30 years fell away in a moment when Elvis's eyes met hers during "Can't Help Falling in Love." His face lit up with recognition, and then he showed an emotion she hadn't seen in him since he was a kid. Openness to harm. In minutes, security was following Mrs. Olsson in the back. It was hard for her to find her way through the halls and changing rooms, past Elvis's entourage and the hangars. Out of the stage lights, she saw him up close and didn't see the rock and roll king. Instead, she saw the little boy she had taught to believe in himself. At first, Elvis didn't say anything. After meeting this woman who had changed his life, he hugged her like a child hugs his grandma. They held each other for a while as the world's most famous person cried like he hadn't cried since he was a kid. Mrs.